Is audio good so far? I have my mic set up.
Oh yeah, you're perfect.
Okay. Let's see if
I don't use the mic. It seems to be fine.
There we go.
Okay, I think we're live now. Holly, you want to tell me when we get some people joining?
Yeah, got quite a few on Substack already.
Okay.
Jeff, I love the old school typewriters in the back. We have one downstairs.
I've got like a dozen of them, and in the writer's cabin we have them hanging from the ceiling. It's a lot of fun.
I got to come out there and then just work on my novel, man.
Oh yeah, come on, man. You can come and stay and work on as long as you want. That's part of the reason the writer's cabin's there, is to invite, artistic people who have a lot to say to come out and write and work on stuff. And usually you could stay for free, bro, but other friends of mine and stuff who come out, we just give them like a super discount. If your rate is normally like $150 a night, I'd take it down to like $60 a night for some of my friends. But you and me have been in battle together, my friend. You stay for nothing.
I know, it's same. Anytime you want to come visit, man, you've got a spot here. Like we have lots of space because my wife is one of 7.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a party.
I've got some folks on here. I'm looking at my stuff. I can see the Facebook people, and Holly sees the Substack people.
Yeah, I can post it on Facebook that I'm live also.
Cross right now.
Let's do that.
And let's see. Good evening from Columbus, Ohio. Hello, Columbus. Montana. Love Montana. Man, you know what I love about Montana? Dodging all the deer. I used to bit through Montana. Every time I go through there, I almost hit a million deer. Marguerite from Atlanta, thanks for joining us. Chicago, Minnesota, Boston. Excellent. North Dakota, filling out the country here. I'm just going to give another minute, Ben, so I can, when I
go
to interview, there'll be more people there. Charlottesville, Virginia, only a couple hours. Hey, Carrie, how you doing? Joining from Charlottesville. And Skunks, it says, and Skunks, Beanie Williams. I don't know where Skunks is, but let's see. Chris from Pocatello, Idaho. Oh, we're really hitting the whole country here. This is good. Astoria, Oregon. Adirondack Mountains in New York. I love it up there. I'm doing a lot of hiking up there when I lived in New York City. Rhode Island, Portland. You guys have this really cool bunch of McMenamins places in Portland. We love Portland. Holly's family lives in Oregon. St. Louis, Washington State, New Brunswick, Canada.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just shared it over to my profile too. So hopefully we'll get some of my friends and bring in some of the oddballs, hopefully.
Yeah. Look at the adjustment here. Camera. There we go. Sorry about this, guys. So let's get started here. We've got at least a couple hundred people on here so far. So I want to introduce you, all my Misfit friends from Facebook, from the Writer's Cabin, Jeff Newton's page, and from the Writer's Cabin on Substack, to my good friend Benjamin Sledge. Ben and I have a unique experience. You hear me talk a lot about the crazy war stories that I've been involved in, and it's strange that Ben and I we met in Afghanistan when I was embedded with the 10th Mountain Division, and Ben was. Were you with 10th Mountain at the time, or were you attached to them at the time?
I was attached to them. I was a civil affairs soldier.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's right. So Ben's come. Oh, there's the cat in the background.
Yeah.
Ben was in the special operations community at the time. Civil affairs was a part of that world, and they traveled and did a lot of stuff together, from the SF units to the civil affairs guys, and above and beyond. And so I remember the most about Ben is that I know when we would go out on these, I said this, actually, Ben and I haven't spoken in 20 years, but we follow each other's journey a lot, and we've texted back and forth and messaged each other a lot. And then when I started thinking about like how great it would be to have him on the podcast, because he's got a really unique background. When we met, Ben was with the civil affairs unit, but we'd go out on these convoys together on the Afghan-Pakistan border. And people would light us up, but Ben was always up on the 50 cal on top of the Humvee, and we, when things would happen, I kind of always knew that we'd be okay because Ben was he was always focused so that we didn't get killed. And I was like, what my correspondent and I used to say, well, with Ben Sledge up there, we're gonna be fine, and we really always were. But I would say the one thing that he couldn't really control was when we ran over the landmines, that was not, there wasn't much you could do about that. But anyways, it's just, and then now Ben is, he's lecturing, he's going on. Can you get the cat off of there? Get the cat. We got a new cat, so we can do some mousing, and he's running up and playing on the typewriters behind us.
Oh, don't worry. I'm waiting for my kids to bust in the room like that one clip, during COVID.
Yeah. And Ben just got back from what training were you doing tonight? Ben's a black belt. You can't tell, but he's fit. He's a little bit more fit than me. But
no, I was I got my black belt in Kyokushin. It's a style of karate, and then I moved into Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then I also train Muay Thai now as well too.
Yeah. I heard you. I've been reading Zebra stuff the last couple of weeks. You're getting worked on a couple of tournaments, right?
Yeah, I got worked hard. So it was brutal.
Which is kind of amazing to me if you think about it, because I know what kind of shape you're in, and I know how hard you train when anything you do anything. So there must be some stone cold killers out there doing Muay Thai.
There are.
But and Ben's written a book that you guys probably saw when we sent out the email today. And he does a lot of speaking stuff, and he's an award-winning writer and author. And also did a lot of work in the intelligence community, and he's just a really great person to know and talk to. But for one, it's just, it's something about spending time with somebody in a place where people are trying to kill you that makes you close really fast. And maybe you can talk about that a little bit. I mean, I almost wrote today like we served together, but I was never in the military. But it feels like we did in a way, right?
Well, to your audience, the funny thing is so I got a book deal in 2020 with a publishing company, and I wanted to include everybody, and I was trying to reach out to people, and I had sent Jeff the manuscript. I was like, "Hey, bro, you're in this," and because you think of the people you go to war with, and there is literally no closer bond because it's life or death. You are 2 seconds away from a dirt nap potentially. And so those bonds are forged really quick. And I remember you guys were in our tent like all the time, watching Family Guy, or we were goofing off or playing pranks on one another. So it was a consistent like brotherhood. And I was, it kind of reminded me of, what's that scene where, when we found out that we were having war correspondents come on, my team sergeant Gonzo at the time, he was like, "Hey, if anybody acts up, it's our ass." And I was like, "I'm gonna be best friends with these people." And that's what I did. I kind of latched on to you guys, and it became fun because I think you really understood what we were doing there. And at the time, the Eye of Sauron, as I like to call it, was on the Iraq War, because we had just invaded Iraq. It was 2003. And so Afghanistan quickly became this forgotten war, and you guys were there to do some really serious reporting. And as embedded reporters, I mean, you got blown up, you got shelled with us. I mean, you saw it all. So they quickly earned our respect. And most foreign war correspondents quickly gain the respect of the soldiers that they're with, as long as they're not being jackwagons. So Jeff and I have stayed in contact over all these years, like either messages or whatever, and have remained. It doesn't matter that 20 years has passed. It feels like yesterday for us.
Yeah, it was really weird when I called you this morning to see if you'd go on today or tomorrow. It was like we sent a text. We texted a little bit last week or so, and then finally I just called you, called you on the phone. You picked right up, and it was literally like I talked to you yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
It's such a really interesting experience. This camaraderie that happens, and it's weird for a journalist to have camaraderie. but I think like, and I mean, part of it is you have to remember, like when we were together, we were in a really volatile area. We were in this fire base called Shkin, in this little town called Shkin, and it's right on it's like 6 kilometers from the Pakistan border.
Oh yeah, they would just launch rockets from Pakistan
all the time, day and night. And then you go on these patrols where you're going to get hit. I mean, it's just pretty normal. And you'd ride right up next to the Pakistani military on the border, and they would like point their weapons at you. It was just it was the bizarro world, right? And we'd go on these looking for Taliban, and we'd be in, I think you probably remember seeing David Rode, and David Rode was from the New York Times with his photographer. He was in the vehicle that was blown up with me. And when that whole thing happened, David, I see David on TV all the time. He's I think he's with the Atlantic. He's also with MSNBC or MS Now, but I see him all the time. And I remember those moments when I remember when Harald, after our vehicle was blown up, you probably remember what that looked like because you were behind us when that happened, right? What do you remember about that?
I think I have photos of it still, of the destroyed Humvee, because for the audience, you have to remember this was 2003. This is prior to us having up armored, which is bulletproof and mine resistant and IED resistant vehicles. So we were rolling around in these bucket trucks, which is you have the back end off, and you would put sandbags in the floor just in case you hit a mine to kind of, keep the catastrophic injuries from really becoming even more catastrophic. And did it blow off the front or the back? I haven't looked at those photos in a long time.
Yeah, the front right.
Front right. That's what I thought. And you guys were in the back. And I remember y'all came back just black and blue and bruised. And I was like, and I was like, oh man, and we had just jumped out of the vehicles.
Well, what happened was our vehicle, when it hit it launched about 20 feet and ended up on its side.
Right.
And the just about a minute before, Staff Sergeant First Class Vernon Story, who was at 10th Mountain, had said, be careful, this road is mined. And we were getting ready to come up with this little choke point. And he said, we've hit mines here before, which always made me go, well, then why are we still going here? But it's because you had to go there because it's the only way to get from here to there. And Vernon said, well, actually, we stopped for a couple minutes. I remember that right before the explosion. And the guy, Vernon came up to me and said, do you want to sit in the right front seat? Because we were in this long convoy and they wanted me to be able to have a really good camera angle on the stuff in front of us. And I was sitting in the back of the cargo Humvee with the top off. And I remember saying, like, because I don't like to sit in the right front because if it's a pressure plate, that's a bad thing. If it's remote, you can't really do anything about it. But I kind of figure I could eliminate half of that problem if it's a pressure plate. So I never sit in the right front, but they invited me to. And like a minute later, we hit it, and the double anti-tank mine, and the right front end was just gone. And so was the guy who was sitting where I would have been sitting. His legs were just blown about 300 feet. And I think that you were behind me in the convoy, and Geraldo was back there, probably like about a half a mile behind us. Right. And I remember seeing video of the mushroom cloud later, what it looked like, and it was pretty catastrophic. And I thought my correspondent was dead at first, and because she had blood coming out of her ears and her nose and her mouth and everything, and finally she kind of woke up after I was telling everybody I thought she was dead, and then you guys came up with the Humvee and the 50 cal, and there was that little back and forth that went on for about 10 minutes. And then it stopped. And then the medevac came in and picked up the guy who was injured. The hardest part for me was I had to keep working. I had one functioning camera at that point because the first camera got blown up. And I still had the box, the hard case with the other camera in it. So I crawled back during the firefight and picked up that camera, pulled it out and started working. And I remember there was you probably don't remember him, but there was this Colonel Brian Hilferty, who was the public affairs guy who came with us, which is not normal for an embed. They normally don't come, but he was so worried about what we might see that he came. I remember during the firefight, I told him, I said, I need to go up and down this line, and you can't restrict me because I'm going to miss everything. And he just said, okay, go ahead, be careful. And I thought, and I've told people about that one other time here on the podcast because it's such contrast to what we see right now, where the media is being kept out of the loop and not be able to see anything. And I thought Brian was a great example of what's, when you trust your reporters to do their job and you trust the soldiers to do their job, everybody does their job properly. But when this guy was injured and his leg was gone, they started treating him immediately. and they, really saved his life. And I was filming that, and the new captain from the unit, because you were doing what they call a right seat, left seat, right seat, where the old unit's leaving and the new unit's coming in, they all coordinate with each other and they learn from the older unit. And this captain comes up, he starts screaming at me to stop filming. And, I had been filming for about 2 minutes and I had what I needed. I just stopped filming. I didn't say anything. But later that night, he came around the campfire we were at inside the skin base, and he tried to rip me again. And I said, listen, dude, you're a young guy. You're like 25. I've been doing this since before you were born. Don't talk to me that way ever again. The only reason I didn't say anything to you out there is because I didn't want to embarrass you in front of these guys. But while these people were shooting at us, you were worried about whether I was filming. And you should have been worried about your men and making sure they were safe while I did my job to a T, to the letter of what my in-bed rules were. So I've seen more combat than you'll ever see, and don't ever fucking talk to me that way again, or I'll take you down in front of everybody. And it was just really hard for me to have that conversation with him because he was young, but he was screaming at me and everything, all that stuff. He stopped, and that conversation we had was about around a bunch of other soldiers at that point that night, and he shut the fuck up. But I remember you being there, and I remember all the stuff that we were going through that day, and it was just kind of like normal. And then we had another event out at Organee a couple weeks later, I think. But what do you think about that situation? What did you learn from? And you were wounded shortly after I left, right?
I was. So if you've ever seen the documentary Restrepo, or the movie The Outpost, and Jeff will confirm this, we were in a small, in Organee, kind of like a bowl in between two mountain ranges. So they would just launch mortars and rockets, and they would put them on timers and goofy stuff, but sometimes they would get spotters, the Taliban or Al Qaeda, and they wanted us gone that day. And somebody during the early days of the Afghan and Iraq wars, Kellogg, Brown and Root didn't exist. This is before the government got all greedy and started doing all their fun investments. So we would hire locals to do water stuff, cook food. You always got dysentery. You guys got dysentery the minute you came to base. Then, laundry, making sure stuff's working on base, just because you don't want to wear out your soldiers the entire time, and we pay them well. But they also would talk to Taliban and Al Qaeda, who would do cross-border operations. And so they had all the spots marked on our base, all of our bunkers, and including our tactical operations center. And so they started targeting all of that.
Just so you guys know, what he's talking about is they would literally walk off steps and count them, and then get that information back to the enemy, who could then adjust for fire. When they shot their first rocket, they would know how far it was from this building to this building, because they had people internally who would walk off those paces and tell people.
Right. Correct. And so someone talked, and we knew they talked, and we're like, oh, we're about to get hit, because a bunch of workers asked to leave early, and that's usually a good sign. And then the other ones that weren't in the loop stayed on base. And so my friend and I, we were gathering up all the locals. One of the poor kids had already taken shrapnel to his chest and had a sucking chest wound, was bleeding out. So they had a medic working on him. And then by the time that we rounded up the rest of them and tried to get them into a safe area, which was our chow hall where we would eat, my world just went black. And I went headfirst into a concrete wall. It broke this wrist across here, took shrapnel in my lower back and in my back plate, woke up totally confused, didn't know what was going on. Kind of sounds like, if you've seen the movie Black Hawk Down, where after the RPG goes off, that's what it's like. It's just like a loud buzzing noise, and you feel like you're 10 feet underwater. And my buddy,
they would shoot these rockets at us that were, in fact, when I was there, they hit us before you were injured. They hit us that one day. Remember, we were running across the bridge, the bunkers, and then suddenly they hit the bunkers.
Yep.
And I remember that scene where everybody was running from the tents where we were sleeping in. It was actually a hardened building, not hardened, but it was like a metal roof building. And they all started, and then we ran because they were hitting the building. So we ran to the bunkers, and I remember running across that little footbridge and turning around and shooting everybody as they were coming towards me, and running across that bridge was the best shots I could get. And then I remember thinking to myself, this is how I'm going to die today, because they kept shooting, and the rockets went over our heads, and they hit the mess hall or the mess tent where they were making bread, and injured a bunch of the locals on that day too.
Right. Right. So it was always something. And so I got injured that day. It's actually the opening chapter of my book, if you want to know it in depth and just how insane it was. So I got injured, ended up saving my buddy's life, who's now my best friend. He has since retired out of the military. He lives here in Colorado. We stay, we do everything together. So it's been great that we both survived. And like I said, those bonds grow quick. And then eventually, time went on, the GWAT continued, the global war on terror. And then you and I, by happenstance, happened to be in Ramadi together and just didn't know it during the Battle of Ramadi.
Yeah, that was really weird too, because we just found that out today. Mm-hmm. I was with Marines from Camp Lejeune, and that's where actually we won our first Emmy Award, because we were there for 13 days in the government center, and they were rotating those Marines out every 4 days. You know what it's like there, right? Like crazy. And you said you would have come to me today, but probably would have been hit on the way in.
Yeah, Route Michigan was the major thoroughfare. It was like the main artery that ran through the city of Ramadi, and it went right up to the government center. And right across the government center was the Malab district, which we called the Heart of Darkness. And it actually worked like a demarcation zone.
That's right.
Yeah. It literally, think like the DMZ. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a free fire zone. They could shoot at anybody walking around because it was so demilitarized.
Mm-hmm. And so you didn't venture past a certain point. Otherwise you'd be shot dead by enemy snipers. If you've seen the movie Warfare, it's very accurate. That is Ramadi. That was SEAL Team 5. I worked with SEAL Team 5 while I was there. We would often do missions. We did riverboat rides with them. Great guys. Love them. But Ramadi was absolutely insane. And the fact that you were at the government center that long is absolutely nuts, because after 4 days, like, you're guaranteed to get in a firefight at the government center. So,
they were the Marines were firing from the rooftop day and night, all day long. They just defending the rooftops. That's all they were doing. And, they would get these guys would sneak up on the building next to us, like from 60 feet away, and shoot RPGs into our positions. Mm-hmm. I remember they took out a small, which is like a small rocket, for you guys that don't know. It's a shoulder fired fire and forget, and then you throw it away kind of rocket system. And we went out on the roof with these guys and ran up to the edge of the wall and shot in the window like 40 feet away to these guys that were shooting RPGs right back at us. And one of the guys was just literally set on fire and jumped out of the window on fire. Right in front of us. And it was just one of those kind of battles that would happen literally right in front of you, like, the length of a half-court basketball court. And it was insane. And I was ready to leave at day 9. And my correspondent was like, let's stay a little longer. And I was like, this is crazy. And, we saw people shot all around us all the time. And we were really lucky. And I can't believe you were in Ramadi at the same time I was. I would have called to have you come pick me up.
Man, we could have done it. We went all over that city, and I was attached to the Marines too. So I was with Echo Company 2-4 Marines. I'm actually, for those that are Marines and are listening, I am a life member of the 2-4 Marine Corps 2-4 Association. Even though I am an Army guy, I literally have a Marine Corps tattoo right here for 1st Marine Infantry Division, because those are my boys, and they let me in just because I spent so much time with them.
Yeah.
So
they were really tough guys. And I actually took a round when I was there. It was a through and through round through my arm, and they just put a pressure wrap on it and then put some stitches through it because it didn't hit any bone or anything. I was really lucky, but it's one of those places that if you walked and you were walking in the souk, the market was empty, you were like, oh, here it comes.
Yeah.
And it was happening all the time. And the guys were just so incredibly tough. And I guess it sort of takes me to a larger philosophical question as to what you learned about yourself and what you learned about war. That first of all, people are asking the name of your book, so I want to pick it up. What do you want to tell them about your book?
It's called "Where Cowards Go to Die." So it has since won 6 literary awards. So I like to pride myself. Like, a lot of people use AI and everything. I wrote this before AI, so it's legit.
Long before AI, my friend.
Long before AI. So it's basically my journey from and if you want to get a synopsis of it, Jocko Willink was in Ramadi with us. He's a friend of mine. I did his podcast recently. It basically tells the story, and he likes to say, I pulp fiction the book and turned it into story of me growing up in a small town in Oklahoma, to joining the military, to, dealing with readjustment. What is my life purpose? What is the purpose of human beings? So it gets into philosophical, existential, spiritual dilemmas all around the concept of war and what does it mean to be a human being. So,
yeah. And so what do you think, what's your big takeaway from the experiences that we had in those places? And what's your experience? What do you feel about war in general after having, how many years were you finally in before you got out?
11. I did 11 years. I just passed the board for Sergeant First Class, which would have been E7. And they said, would you like to re-enlist? I said, sure, I can do another 3 more years. They said, no, this is an indefinite re-enlistment. You're doing your 20. And I said, no, forget that. So I got out at 11 years, and then I moved into geopolitical intelligence with a company called Stratfor Rain. And started working with guys. If any of you love geopolitics, I recommend a close friend of mine that I worked with, Peter Zion. He's still a client of mine. We are very, very tight, good friends. But I love geopolitics. I love to understand how the world works because of my background in civil affairs and how demography, population bell curves, and geography dictate a lot of political landscapes as well as history. So that's a little synopsis. You'll get that in the book. But really, to answer your question, like, what did I learn out of war? It's a fascinating concept for me in so many ways. When you join, I think a lot of people are super gung ho and you want to go to war because that's what you trained to do. But I was also really scared. I was really scared to go to war. I was a 21-year-old kid at the time. I had joined when I was 18, right out of high school. And Clinton was president. So I just figured, maybe we'll do some peacekeeping missions in like Bosnia-Herzegovina at the time.
Yeah. Put a blue hat on here or something.
Yeah, man. And then dude, the towers fall and then it's just game on. And it was always preparing for war. And so when I first got to Afghanistan, my initial thought was these people are the enemy. I think we all had that fresh wound of 9/11. And then as I begin to interact with the populace, you realize that's not the case. Like, these were just people trying to live their lives. And the same is true in Iraq. Like, most of the people were just trying to live their lives. Imagine if a foreign government invaded the United States and you suddenly have your water, sewage, electricity cut off. You're going to create an insurgency. You fire their army. Well, now you have a really well-armed, formerly, guys who know how to fight, come fight you because they don't have their pensions and all of that. So when I was looking at the aspects of, why do we go to war and what do we do? I became very jaded about it, especially by the time that I got to Iraq, because I knew I had been sold just bullshit. We knew the war was bullshit at that point. I mean, it was 2006. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Maybe Saddam had sent some chemical weapons to Syria here and there, but everything that we had been led to believe was just fabricated. The intelligence was bad or outright false. So suddenly I'm left with this question of like, what am I doing here? In Afghanistan, it felt like there was a purpose, but then that purpose shifted, especially when after 6 months, we kind of had wrapped it up and we're like, what do we do? And then we just stayed there for another 20 years. So I tell people all the time, I'm not a pacifist, but I am also very much against a lot of the reasons that the United States now goes to war. And I saw it firsthand. There's a story I tell in my book when I am in Iraq where John McCain comes in with a team from Newsweek. And they had literally asked, so if you want to get mad about your taxpayer dollars, this is a good one to get mad about. They found out he was coming in, this is prior to his presidential campaign run. And they're like, we got to beautify this city because it's an all out urban war zone. So we had blast barriers, concrete blast barriers. They paid locals absurd amounts of money to paint it to look pretty. John McCain goes out there and does this fluff piece for, Newsweek and everything else, talking about the change that is happening in Ramadi. And that was true. We were the most violent city on earth at the time. Half of all deaths that occurred for the United States Marine Corps happened from 2006 to 2007 during the Battle of Ramadi. Half of all daily attacks that happened in the entire country of Iraq happened in Ramadi during that year.
And it felt to me like everything was happening in the government center where I was sleeping.
Yeah, that was just one part, that was one. So
we wouldn't venture too far out beyond those borders, but maybe 1 kilometer, and that was as far as we would walk.
Right. So I remember him, and my buddy remembers it clear as day. He's the one, that I pulled all the information from. He's literally standing there knee deep in raw sewage, talking about how beautiful Ramadi has become and how pacified it was become. Well, that wasn't true. The next couple of weeks, my members of my team go out and people get killed. And, they're having to throw tourniquets on. By that point, we would all carry 5 tourniquets at one point because we knew we would take legs blown off, arms, something. And they ran out of tourniquets that night. They were pulling off strips of clothing just to tie off because there were IEDs in the wall. And so when I look objectively, a lot of times I think that the United States war machine now is made to enrich a lot of our politicians. And the people that pay the price are the average families. My family paid the price with me going to war and coming home really screwed up for several years. And that's not fair to them. I didn't get rich off of it. I didn't, it's cool that I wrote a book about it, but, I live with the consequences of what I did. And anybody who says that, war can be clean and surgical and precise is dead wrong. There will always be collateral damage. There will be innocent people that are going to die. And with the Iran war, we have already seen that. Innocent people will die. They're just going to be collateral damage. And so the minute that you release the dogs of war, human suffering is going to happen. And so you better be damn sure that the reason that you're going into some place is to stop atrocities, to end apartheid, stuff like that. I can totally get on board with, or an attack on us that is just completely unjustified and because people hate.
Yeah. And you might even make the argument that going after somebody's nuclear material when you don't trust them might be a reason to go to war. But I would say that at least the last 40 years, when they've been allegedly right on the edge of having a bomb every month, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, we probably have more evidence that they don't have a nuclear warhead and that they probably would take a lot longer to have one. Now, I think we've actually going to accelerate. We'll talk more about Iran, but I think we're going to accelerate their desire to have a bomb now much faster than they would have been.
I think we'll accelerate a lot of countries.
Exactly. And you and I know that the Iranian regime are not good people, and they do horrible.
They are horrible, and I don't want to see them in power. But hey, I also don't agree with the Iran war. But we'll get into that.
Yeah. I think it's what's interesting to me listening to you say this after so many years I've not seen you, is when I look at you in my mind's eye, what I remember you on top of that Humvee with that 50 cal and all these villages we would go into, knowing that we go in and literally I'd be in the vehicle where the translator was, and he would be telling us that we're getting ready to get hit, or when we leave the village, he would say, okay, the Americans are, they would use code, but they basically say the Americans are leaving and you can hit them now. Right. We could literally hear that through our translators on the radios in our vehicles. And I had a front seat to that because I was always with a commander unit. But I remember you specifically as one of those guys who was always up on that 50 cal, and you look like, and I don't use this in an insulting way. This is the best description our viewers would understand, but you definitely were built and looked like fucking Rambo. You were like the most phenomenally in shape. You're how old now, Ben?
I'm 44 now.
He's 44. You can imagine him when he was 24. Okay.
Yeah. I ate gyms for a living during that time period. I think I was a human petri dish for every muscle supplement known to man.
Yeah. But see, that to me, that's the interesting thing is that you say, I came back changed. I came back broken. And that to me is almost an impossibility, having known you in that time. You look at the people who come back broken, they remind me of people who just couldn't handle it. And they weren't the version of you that I see. And so it's important for viewers to understand that kind of world both seeing and experiencing things, both when your friends are getting shot and killed, but also seeing, the things that happen to civilians and kids and families that happen, when you're dropping bombs on things. And, I don't think either of us would argue that sometimes war is necessary. Right. But when it's necessary, it needs to be for the right reasons. And right now, what we see with Iran is not a clear vision of why. And there is no vision at all, actually, from this administration. But at least in Afghanistan, you could make the argument. You had terrorism cells that were there. Al-Qaeda was there. They were hiding there. Bin Laden ran back and forth across that border from Afghanistan and Afghanistan and Pakistan. And there was a reason why they went in. Iraq was much different and much more convoluted and made up. But Afghanistan, you could see why we were there. So, but Iran is a completely different story. I mean, the regime is horrible. They're horrible to their own people. They don't believe, that anybody has, a right to have a normal job, that voting isn't, or that you can't have multiple religions there. It's one of those kind of places. But it's not also one of those places that when you attack them, you better understand. I tell people the Afghan Taliban fought us to a standstill over, decades. And they didn't have the kinds of weapon systems that the Iranians have. But they both have one thing that's the same. They both have a fervent culture of pride and not wanting to be defeated in battle. It's built into their culture. So when now you hear them walking away from peace talks when they're supposedly getting their ass kicked every day, it's because they just will not accept us dictating how this war is going to go. And we're really close to the end, Donald Trump says. It's like the enemy has a fucking say in when the end happens. You can walk away all you want, but that doesn't mean it's going to end, because now they have been. Remember, we always used to use that term. We stirred up a hornet's nest. Yeah, and that's what we've done in Afghanistan. But so like you came home. Let me just kind of. I wanted to go through a particular order of stuff that I was going to talk about tonight. And let's see. So the pattern that we've seen now is we've got now it looks like there's 10,000 more American troops heading to the Gulf, right? Yeah. And they say 5,000 to 6,000 are going to be on a particular carrier. That carrier has been reported widely, but I'm one of these people that believes if you guys want to go find it, But I don't feel like helping anybody understand right now that there's going to be 5,000 U.S. troops on a particular ship. I'll let other people do that. But what Hegseth's done by dismantling the embed program and the Pentagon press corps is he's actually lost control of the narrative. And you probably have a pretty good understanding of that better than anybody. He can no longer tell journalists they can't report whatever they want because they're not under his thumb at all. And so they're going to report what they're going to report, and they're not beholden to him at all, which I think is a colossal information mistake, which I think you'll be able to talk about well.
Yeah, I mean, information warfare. So for the listeners, within the special operations community, there's this entity called USACAPOP, which is Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations Command. So we went civil affairs soldiers. We win the hearts and minds. We also wage information warfare. We gather human intelligence, intelligence gathering by interacting with the local populace. So we get to see the best and the worst of war. And then you have your PSYOP soldiers, which their whole job is to influence, persuade, and change the narrative. And that's literally what we're seeing in the American media and the politicians and everything else now. So it's, for me, a lot of times it's like that scene from Mad Max Fury Road where it's like, that's bait. I'm like, that's a PSYOP, So it's a psychological operation. And so when you can't control a narrative, it's just going to spin out of control. And so we've already seen that the American public is not behind this war at all, because the justifications are completely unclear. There is no narrative. What is the narrative? Oh, well, it's regime change. Well, no, it's not. It's uranium enrichment. And when the justification is unclear, the reasons usually are too. And so without having that, and we've already seen from Signalgate and all of that, and just for the record, if I did that when I was in uniform, I would have gone to jail. I would have gone to Fort Leavenworth. And Tulsi Gabbard, for the record, is still a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. I don't understand how she's not facing administrative court punishment. But again, it's higher ups. I get it. But when you leak that information and when that stuff is going out and you can't even control the war narrative anymore, and you have to remember in World War II, we were really good at doing that. We controlled all of the narrative. People would go to the movie theaters, they would watch, they would sit here, you have to buy war bonds, they would buy war bonds. You have to support the troops, you got to support the troops. Now, that narrative's blown to kingdom come. Like nobody knows what to believe anymore because the constant information deluge is nonstop and we don't even understand the reason. So let me play to geopolitics a little bit as far as why this is good. Notice that no Israeli soldiers will be on the ground there. They just don't. You know how many Israeli soldiers were in Afghanistan and Iraq, despite being our greatest allies?
Yeah, 0, right?
0.
I never saw one.
Yeah,
and I saw a lot.
There never was.
I saw coalition troops from all over the world in both those countries, and in the Gulf states as well, where our air support was. Mm-hmm. But I never saw an Israeli ever.
Yeah. So here's the thing you have to remember: the Saudis loved it. Point, yeah. And then also, why are the Gulf states not doing anything? Well, modern warfare is not influenced in like who fights the war. It's measured in who you can convince to fight it. And who did they convince to fight it? Good old United States of America. Notice
they convinced Donald Trump. They haven't been able to convince us to do it for the last 40 years.
Exactly.
Which is noteworthy, right? Somebody's made a comment of that today, and I've made that point before. And, it comes down to the fact that he's dumb enough to buy into that game.
Yeah, and it seems that Vance, according to reporting from the New York Times, was the only one who was really adamantly against it. So, and, he's a former Marine, so he should know better, but neither here nor there. But the thing that you have...
He's a former Marine public affairs officer.
Yeah. All of us...
How many of those Marine public affairs officers did you see in Ramadi?
We'll call a spade, and we have names for them. So I'm not... I don't want to be that guy, the gatekeeper-y guy that's like, oh, you didn't...
I actually have a lot of friends in public affairs, but most of them were not on the battlefield.
Yeah. You served, you wear the uniform. I'm not going to do that, but I'm kind of like, you can't claim to be a war fighter if you were not really in the war on the front line. So that being said, so the Gulf states also are not helping out at all, despite getting hit repeatedly. Well, here's the reason why. The Saudi Arabians love having Americans in the region because we provide regional stability. And the reason why this happens, here's your geopolitical lesson for the day, is the Sunnis and Shias hate each other. Now, here's the reason why. The reason why is that the Sunnis outnumber the Shias 6-1. 6-1. And so the Saudi Arabia claims to speak for the whole of Islam. And it came back to, I think, a break over the cousin. I think it was like Abu Bakr or somebody, what was going on. But the big thing that you have to remember specifically is that Iran is Shia and Persian, whereas the vast majority of the Muslim world is Sunni, and they outnumber them. But Saudi Arabia claims to speak for the whole of Islam, whereas Iran claims to speak for the whole of Islam. So you have these two factions fighting each other, and they both view each other as apostates. And so by having the Americans in the area...
They have for hundreds and hundreds of years now, since the death of one of the family members that caused this whole riff in the first place.
It was a cousin,
grandson or something. But I think, this is where I need to have my Islamic scholars on here to talk about this. But I think that, to me, what's interesting is that we sell weapons to all the Gulf states. Mm-hmm. And they all learn to fly our aircraft, and they fly those aircraft from their own bases, and they come to the United States for training. They do all this military training to defend themselves. And then when push comes to shove, they're like, we're just going to watch this one, see how it goes. So they have all this weaponry and all this stuff, but they don't want to use it. And I can't say actually that I blame them, frankly, at this point. Like, why would you want to get involved in this quagmire that didn't need to start in the first place?
Right.
But it is noteworthy that they have hundreds of billions of dollars worth of weapons that we sold to Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, to Bahrain, to Jordan, to all those Gulf states that are in there. The Omanis participate with us in war exercises. So I think that, like, it's noteworthy that none of them are doing anything whatsoever to support this effort. And that's probably in some respects ironic, considering how many weapons we sold them. But in the same respect, I consider it smart, because they're sending a message, hey, we didn't have to go here. And at some point, the Americans, as we always do, will leave. Yeah. And when we leave, we will not care that they're still there. The only reason we care is because oil traverses through the Strait of Hormuz.
Exactly. And same thing, the Saudis love the stability and the oil. And we made a pact with them eons ago, basically saying, you keep the oil flowing and we'll keep the region stable. And now, I mean, we haven't ever really done that well. You look at the Arab Spring, where we destabilized the entire Middle East. You look at like what we're doing now, and there's a lot of power players at work. And I feel like we are being just played like a fiddle in this whole thing. And now, like going back, what are the justifications? Regime change, nuclear weapons. Now it's oil. Oh, well, we got to get the oil flowing again, even though the United States is completely self-dependent, but it interrupts the world trade. With the shale revolution, we are completely self-sufficient. We export, I believe, up to 40% of our oil to other nation states. And so right now you have those shadow fleets that are going on, that the French and other places are intercepting from like the Russians. And then the Indians just captured one not too long ago, these shadow fleet oil tankers. And then, Trump is talking about Venezuela, and it's like, none of this had to happen necessarily, but here we are.
We had a stable oil market when the war began, and oil was $55 or $56 a barrel. Mm-hmm. And now it's well over 100, and it could go much higher. And I know that like this next 2 weeks, they're going to be quote unquote negotiating, but the negotiations are not going to work because they don't have smart people negotiating. The Iranians have very smart people negotiating, and the Iranians do not feel like they have to give on any of their points. So they're at an impasse. They will not give up the Strait of Hormuz now. We will have to take it from them. And that's what scares me, because I think that with the note that Trump says, we're almost done with this and we think they'll make a deal. We hope they make a deal. There's no such thing as a deal. It's not business. This is fucking war. Mm-hmm. You're either going to have a peace agreement, or a surrender, or you're not. And there's no deal. This is not business. You're not buying a fucking apartment building in New York City. And it's just the way he talks about things. It's just so uneducated. Anyway, I'm going to.
Yeah. And so for a second, like, strip away all the slogans, the congressional chest thumping within this moment, and ask yourself this question. What does the average American family in like Oklahoma or North Dakota or New York or Tennessee, or Georgia or even California, what are they supposed to gain from a war with Iran? Lower grocery prices? Are we getting safer neighborhoods? Is our border getting better? Are we getting better health care? Do we have less debt? Well, no, we're dropping $1 billion a day. And how about a future our kids can actually afford? So that part, and the people that can justify it, the cognitive dissonance for me is just kind of overwhelming, to where I'm like, okay, what is this supposed to accomplish for the American public?
Well, you're starting to sound more and more Canadian every day, Ben.
Well, the Republicans ran on America first. Why do we keep exporting all of, cards on the table? I'm very, very libertarian. I'm fiscally conservative, socially liberal. And I'm just like, why do we keep sending money overseas? And why does my tax bill keep going up? And why can't I afford groceries? And, it doesn't, for all the talk of America first, it seems like we're getting America last.
Well, and that's the funny thing, is because whenever you see MAGA, and I say that word with great disdain, you're talking about people who call themselves patriots while walking over the First Amendment and only holding up the Second Amendment.
Second Amendment now too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That one. That's right, because they don't like liberals having guns. And you're talking about patriotism. They wave the flag around, but then they put it all over their clothes and their shorts and their jackets. That's the kind of thing that's blasphemy. They're against people
I like
kneeling.
to call it LARPing, live action role playing.
That's right. They're against people kneeling at football games, as if that's going to somehow take away your love for country. And I think that they're all about those phrases, but they don't live up to any of them. And this newest one is just one that they're using to sound like they're putting America first, when they never really believed that was going to happen. They don't really care what happens to America as long as they're white Christian nationalist males running it, period. And that's the troubling thing about all this.
I tell people all the time, Christian nationalism is the greatest heresy facing the church right now.
That's right. And you'll see, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I know I have some service members and some service members' parents watching, because I've had some conversations with some parents who called me saying, what do I do? And I try to give my best, advice on places like that. So tell me, as a former soldier, well, once a soldier is always a soldier, but as a former soldier who spent your life in those places, what do you tell these parents about what they should think about as it relates to their kids being overseas?
Yeah. So here's a great thing. I tell people this all the time. There's a common misconception about the United States military, whether it's Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, or the Army, even Coast Guard, and now Space Force, which is fun. I'm in Colorado Springs, so I get the Space Force guys all the time. So we make jokes at them all the time, like the beep boop boop, like. Now I would join the Space Force the minute aliens invaded. I'd be like, this is awesome. Give me one of those Halo suits and I'm in. But the thing that I remind a lot of parents is, do you know how many people actually see combat?
You're asking me how many? I mean, it's out of the people who see combat, out of all the service, it's a tiny fraction. I mean, it usually takes 3 warfighters to support 1 infantry guy, and the amount of infantry guys that see combat is probably like 2% or something.
Correct. It's roughly anywhere from 7 to 10% of the military. So the odds of your son or your daughter, and granted, there are always things that can happen, like we saw with those Scud missiles and everything else that hit bases and whatnot, that can happen. Like, you can be safe in a Kuwaiti air base and that can happen. But the odds are actually in your kid's favor unless they are a special operations soldier, infantry line unit, military police, or they're combat arms typically, because they're not going out. So the thing, I did a podcast not too long ago, and the guy is a former Navy SEAL canine handler. And he asked me, how many days were you outside the wire? So outside the wire means you are not on a military installation like in Iraq. It means you actively went out, you were patrolling, you were getting shot out, stuff like that. I have over 500 days outside the wire, and that blew his mind. But I was interacting with the local populace all the time. And when I said it, guys from my unit contacted me and said, I never really thought about how much danger we were constantly in. I was like, it was pretty wild when I was
with your unit, we were outside the wire more than we were inside the wire.
Correct.
We would go home and sleep for like 8 hours, get up at 4 a.m. when it was still dark out, and go out on missions all day, get back like 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock at night,
Correct.
Eat something, go to sleep, do the next mission the very next day.
The longest I was outside the wire was 3 weeks.
Yeah. I think I have I have to be honest with you, compared to a lot of soldiers, I'm quite certain I have, because 60 Minutes couldn't tell stories being inside the wire. We were always outside the wire. And so we were seeking out units like yours to where we could be. And I'm actually our team is the only journalist team that was in combat operations with the Navy SEALs ever. Sure. So it's like, I get it. It's, but it becomes a normal thing for you after. I remember, I had the story I tell, and I think we were with your unit. Do you remember we went out really early one morning? It's like 4 o'clock in the morning, and we were going down this wadi, which to you guys it's a dry creek bed, and they basically are the roads of Afghanistan in many of the remote places. So you drive on the wadis because it's the best roads. So you're driving through these creek beds, and it was like 4:30 in the morning, and there was an Afghan, and I was freezing. It was really cold. Mm-hmm. And I had like a down jacket on, the whole thing. And we were in that open cargo Humvee. And I looked over, and there was this, and the wadi had certain parts of it had creeks going, and the rest of it was dry. And I looked over, and there was this guy in this little village, and he was in his dishdasha. His shirt was off, but his dishdasha pants were on. And he was up to his chest in this water, and it was snow on the mountains, and it was freezing out. And it was like, this water had to be close to freezing. And I was freezing in the Humvee with a down jacket on. And this guy looked over at me, and I looked at him, and I said, this is why we're not going to win the war in Afghanistan. because he looked over and waved and smiled. And I was freezing my nutsack off. And I thought, we don't understand these people and their mindset about how tough they are. We just don't get it. And trust me, I was around some of the toughest guys in the U.S. military. And I think I have great respect for them, but I don't think sometimes we estimate our enemy or the people in those countries that we perceive to be our enemy. I don't think we estimate a Taliban soldier can get in a Hilux Toyota or hike across the Hindu Kush with flip-flops on and bandoliers of machine gun rounds all over him and an AK-47 and like a handful of rice and a couple of pieces of flatbread, and he can go for weeks, and try to chase them in a Humvee, right? Forget about it.
I just remember even during Ramadan, our interpreters, and it was like you said, it was freezing. They are fasting. They cannot eat till sundown or drink. Or drink. And they're wearing flip-flops and they just keep going. And I was like, for real? Like, I mean, yeah, they've grown up in that rugged environment, whereas a lot of Americans, we grow up in comfort and flushing toilets and all the creature comforts. And, you go back to Alexander the Great marching across Afghanistan. That's where he stopped. We literally call it the graveyard of empires. And they compared it to a hydra, a three-headed hydra. Once you cut off one of their head, three more would sprout when dealing with the Afghan tribesmen. And so I think there's a lot of American hubris. And I think being a good citizen requires objectively looking at your own government, your own city states, and being a well-informed and responsible citizen that knows not only what's going on in your city, state, nation, but also what's going on in the world so that you can make wise and informed decisions. And it seems like a lot of times I always laugh about, I think it was like Family Guy or American Dad, where they were showing us bringing democracy to like Afghanistan, and they're throwing out like Maxim magazines and 30 packs of Budweiser and guns and stuff. And they're like, look, now you're free. And it seems like that's kind of what we do, not realizing that these people never even wanted that. They just wanted to be left alone. Right. Specifically in Afghanistan and in Iraq, they just wanted to just live. That was it. They didn't want us jacking around with everything and screwing stuff. They didn't want a democracy. They wanted some type of theocracy. And we said, well, you can't have that. Well, right. That's a problem.
Right. Now I had a couple of comments I want to respond to. And I just got to find the one that I really felt like I needed to respond to.
You find that. Let me finish answering the mom and dad question for you.
Yeah, please do.
So, I tell a lot of people, your kids are going to get the best training ever. I am still a big proponent of the military because I believe it provides a lot of structure. I believe it provides a lot of discipline. I love it. I am proud to have served. I may not necessarily be proud of the way that things went down because of the Iraq war and everything, but it is still one of the greatest jobs I've ever had. It built into me life systems and disciplines that are great. And yes, you are going to be potentially in harm's way, but the odds of that happening, if we were going to go to Vegas and I said, you have a 90% chance to win if you put, money down on red, you'd probably take that risk. And so at the same thing, there's no guarantees in life, but a lot of times your sons and daughters are going to be safe. They're going to have the training that they need. They're going to receive the discipline, and they are hot commodities when they come out into the workforce because they have a lot of the drive, they have a lot of the responsibility, and they have a lot of the structure to succeed. And so veterans are very sexy in the corporate work world. So I believe it really does set you up for the future, and it is worth doing even despite the risk. But even then, the risk is still relatively low unless we're talking about like a World War II level, or World War III breaks out, and then you might need to worry a little bit more. But as far as Iran, we are a superior, fighting force. It doesn't, but as Jeff pointed out, like we might just end up with the three Hydra again. But again, I still think it's extremely beneficial. I am proud to have served. I think that your sons and daughters are doing something noble, regardless of what the government is doing with them. Now, the government sends young men and women to go to war and die. Well, they never pay the price. But freedom is always bought with blood. And I'm not saying that Iran war is freedom for anybody at this point, but the fact that a young man or woman can sacrifice for something bigger than themselves and for somebody just that they have got to know. There's something really, really beautiful about that. And if you're against all that stuff, man, join the Peace Corps. Go do that. Go serve. Go do something. I think it's beautiful when young men and women, put their talents and their abilities to do something bigger than themselves. And I think military.
What you're saying is you can separate their service from the fact that they're stuck in a situation that is a bad policy.
Correct.
They still can serve and do it admirably. When they came back from Vietnam, they took a lot of shit from people who didn't know what they went through. And we said we'd never repeat that. And that's I think, the message we want to have. They're being asked to go do something. And I've talked to parents whose kids are serving right now and do not believe in this war, but they've gone and served anyways because they've raised their hand when they were called to. And I think that's the hard part, is knowing that you're going to serve in something that you don't think has real value, like maybe Afghanistan might have. And I just remind people that we always kill more people than the enemy kills us. Always. Mm-hmm. Vietnam, 2 million people. We killed plenty of people. We lost 58,000, I think is the number.
300,000 in Iraq.
Yeah. 300,000 people killed in Iraq. And that's not including all that. Yeah. It's like a huge number. And so we always kill more people, but we don't necessarily win the war. And I think, and Afghanistan's an example of that as well. There was a note from Zach Borley. Zach said, stop with the white male conservative Christian is the problem. And I would just say, I wanted to push back on this a little bit. First of all, what I said was, Ben is a white male Christian.
Yeah. And I have conservative values.
With conservative values. And he's not the fucking problem. I'm talking about Christian nationalists, which are different than Christians. So, and I think you need to understand that when I talk about Christianity, I'm not anti-religion no more than I hope somebody respects the fact that I'm agnostic or whatever. And I think that, we have an obligation as Americans to respect other people's religious views, period, full stop. And Christian nationalists do not support other religions or other people's views. And they are the problem. And they have a tendency, if you look at the administration right now, to be white Christian nationalists. I can start naming off the people if you want me to. Every position within the government. You can start with Pete Hegseth having prayers, Christian prayer services on Fridays every day at the Pentagon, but not really wanting to allow other religions to. And he's gotten rid of the top ranked chaplain within the U.S. military because his views were different than those of Hegseth.
And he was a Baptist, which was even crazier,
Yeah.
And he was very well liked. I have friends that are chaplains inside the military. And I asked him, I said, was this guy a good guy? Give me the skinny. And they said he was very well liked, So it's interesting. And the problem for me is I don't have, I think when people say white Christian nationalism, you do have to distinguish. And the problem is they're getting all the focal point right now. There are a lot of incredible churches doing incredible work that are following the teachings of Jesus, that are loving the poor and the marginalized and their neighbors, their enemies even.
Some of them are getting the shit beat out of them by ICE at rallies.
Yeah, but they're not going to get, it's, you and I know, if it bleeds, it leads. So they're not going to get the screen time because that's peaceable. But at the same time, I am very worried because there's a guy, and this is all my theological background. Short synopsis: I became a Christian after the wars, got really heavily involved in theology, studying philosophy, existentialism, all of that. I wanted to figure out what is the point of human existence. Read a lot of secular atheists, from Albert Camus to Jean-Paul Sartre. I loved Heidegger, I love Kierkegaard, Walter Brueggemann's another guy that I enjoy. So I'm read. And for me, I like a lot of old dead theologians too. And as I was coming up, there became this new movement. It was called the Neo-Reformed movement. And you had a lot of these pastors who kind of capitalized on young men's core wounds. And so I kind of got involved in it initially. And that was guys like Mark Driscoll, who is now like a Turning Point USA, who is a disgraced pastor, by the way, and blew up his church in Seattle. And then there was this other guy named Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson is a white supremacist who literally wrote a book called Black and Tan, talking about how slavery was not wrong. He got kicked out of an organization called the Gospel Coalition because of his views. That guy is Pete Hegseth's spiritual advisor. That's a problem. Right. That is a problem. Full stop. I don't care. Like, and if you serve in the military is the greatest melting pot of anything that you are ever going to see. You're going to go into the barracks and you're going to find an Indian guy who's cooking, naan bread and curry for some country boy who's never had it, while some other guy's blasting rap. And, and then you have the other dude who's metal guy like me being like, you got to listen to this. And you all become friends. Like, and what is happening is that fabric is being torn down. And as opposed to our unified identity as soldiers and as Americans, we're like, the message is like, if you're not one way, then you're only this way. And that is problematic. Like, I love the fact I grew up believing that America was a melting pot. That's what I was taught. That's what I love to believe. And I can respect people that have differing views and opinions than I do, whether they are on the MAGA side, that's fine. Or they're on the leftist and they want to go full that direction. That's fine. We can still be friends and disagree. But when you are systematically trying to create take the message of Christianity as a power grab, there is something inherently dark and wicked about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a question from Jenny Ritzler Johns. She says, Ben, just curious, why did you join the military? What was your motivation? Me, as a Cold War veteran, 17 years old from a poor family with little job opportunities and no money for college. That all changed when I went on delayed entry in high school. So what was your reason for joining?
Yeah. So same thing. I grew up lower middle class. Both my parents went to college, but they got in debt pretty early on, having kids. And so, I grew up in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. It's a suburb of Tulsa. Still love it. Love Tulsa. Great place to raise a family. The people there are so kind. And the thing for me, was my parents wanted me to go to college. They believed, it's 1999. The .com stuff is taken off there. You get an entry level job. You're going to be making $50,000 going to college. Ooh, that's big money at the time. And so they're like, you have to go to college. And I was like, great, I guess I'll join the military. But that wasn't the full reason. My grandfather was a paratrooper in World War II with the 82nd Airborne. So I have this 82nd tattoo because that was the first, 82nd was the first who I served with in Afghanistan.
What year was that?
That was right before 10th Mountain. That was 03. Yeah. So
this is outrageous. I was in Fayetteville then.
Oh, no way. Okay. Yeah. I was with 3504th prior to that. So it's one of my combat patches. So my grandfather was really proud when that, and it was one of the ones I wore the most, even though I love the 10th and 1st Infantry and the Marine Corps guys, but just because of my grandfather. But yeah, he was a paratrooper, World War II, and he played a big influence on my life. And I also just thought girls liked a guy in uniform, and I was a dork. So that was kind of my reason. It was kind of self-centered, money and family history.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So we're looking at we did talk about the religious aspect. What do you think? We have JD Vance and Trump openly taking shots at the Pope. Honestly, for me, Vance is a Catholic light. I mean, he started in 2019 as a Catholic, and now he's trying to explain to the Pope that he apparently doesn't understand that religion he thinks religion should be kept separate from policy. And he says, just like me as vice president, I'm careful about what I say on policy, to not offend the president of the United States. And just like that, you should keep in your lane on religion. Does he fucking not understand that these two things are inherently the same? I mean, has he not heard of abortion rights? Has he not heard of, separation of church and state? Has he not heard of any number of things that are policy. War is about religion and policy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every war that I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot of them, more than I can promise you any U.S. military veteran I've ever met, I can tell you everywhere I'm at, religion is the center of that conflict in some capacity. Yeah. And I can tell you every time I've been with an American unit going out to war, from some fire base, there's always a chaplain giving a prayer about killing their enemy. And, you know, and so those two things are not separate. J.D. Vance's thoughts that the president should stay, or excuse me, the Pope should stay in his lane is ridiculous to me. He said that, and Mike Johnson chimed in today. Mike Johnson, I don't consider him an authority on anything. He is a Christian nationalist, by the way.
I don't even think he's a Christian, to be honest. And like, only God can judge the heart. But let me tell the audience this: Jesus literally says you can tell a tree by its fruit. If you keep putting off diseased fruit, the trees rot. Like there's rot. Yeah. So I mean, you either take Jesus seriously at his words, or he didn't mean what he said. So which is it?
Yeah. Well, that's where the Christian nationalism versus Christian comes in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just to remind people, who was it? Oh yeah, Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity on Fox had the audacity. Give you a quote from him. He said, he pondered recently about whether the Pope even read the Bible. He said, has Pope the 14th even read the Bible? In response to the anti-conflict stance he has, he said, has he ever heard of David and Goliath? Now, I find this particularly choice, suggesting that the Pope hasn't read the Bible. Just to be clear, just on his accolades, prerequisite for admission already requires advanced degrees to the Catholic religious
He's very
leadership.
well read.
Yeah.
He has MDivs, like doctorates. It's crazy.
Advanced degrees in theology, which includes extensive theological studies and credits. A doctorate in canon law. I mean, and here's Sean Hannity asking whether he's read the Bible. Like that's the beginning of his education, long before he ever decides he's going to be a priest. And then Sean Hannity, of all people, who doesn't have a college degree. He has no fucking college degree. So these are the people that MAGA are following, uneducated fucking idiots who are, and listen, I'm not a defender of the Catholic Church, by the way. I have a lot of friends who are Catholic, but you know, just like I have a problem with the Epstein files, I had many problems with the Catholic Church on similar issues. And I try not to bring that up to my close friends as the hypocrisy of them not jumping in and saying, hey, this is a problem. But I think a lot of them understand it was a problem, the priesthood and what happened to children through the Catholic Church. That's not what we're here talking about tonight. But like, frankly, the idea that,
let me break it down theologically from the Christian perspective. So I'm actually a confirmed Catholic as well, too. I'd like to tell people I'm a day walker, like Blade, you know. So I got what started my faith journey was while I was in Iraq. My wife had left. And so I didn't know where to turn. And I ended up meeting this chaplain who was a priest. And I just began meeting with him. And he just really started planting some seeds in me. And I started thinking, well, maybe this isn't bunk. And, you know, started my own journey. And I had to ask the question, you know, like, what is our purpose in life as human beings? Like, your purpose could be to be the best writer, or if you're Babe Ruth, to hit home runs. But what does it mean? What is our purpose as Homo sapiens? You know, is if the entropic heat death of the universe is going to happen in 3.5 billion years and we cease to exist as a species, why does anything that we do matter? There's a question that I wanted to have answered, you know, and you had the absurdist who said life is absurd, just to accept it. You're Sisyphus pushing a rock up a hill. And I was like, that sounds awful. And so I just began to explore all the major world religions, and this priest really influenced me. So I decided to get confirmed. And then that kind of steamrolled eventually when I came home. And so now I work a lot with Catholics. I have friends who are priests and, you know, nuns and they have their own like subculture. I got a dude who's part of my life group who's a Catholic. And so, you know, he's like, oh, do you still take the sacrament? So anyways, I say that to say, you know, there's Catholics and Protestants really aren't that too different. There's a lot of the same stuff that we believe. It's just different dogmatic practices. And so to say that the Pope doesn't know like what he's talking about, and specifically like canon law, is laughable at best. Especially that would be like me going to like one of the greatest Protestant theologians of our time, N.T. Wright, and being like, you don't know what you're talking about. Even though like I have a very firm and could probably argue some really, really great points along with him, but I would never do that because I know I would get destroyed. And if you look at, and again, this goes back to Mike Johnson's comment. I've brought this up multiple times in teaching people and talking about Christianity. It's very weird to me that so many people want to quote the Old Testament, the law, the Torah, and not the words of Jesus. They're like, oh, well, what about David and Goliath? And I go, well, Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. Oh, Jesus says, blessed are the poor in spirit. Jesus says, love your enemies. Jesus says, bless those who persecute you. You know, he says it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
This administration, Ben.
Yeah. So why are they not quoting red letter Jesus? And what's interesting is Russell Moore, he got pretty much ousted from the Southern Baptist Convention because it came out against Trump, and said like this stuff is inappropriate. And we saw with the Trump Jesus thing recently. My whole theory is that his press corps told him, oh, say that it was doctored. And he literally thought, oh, I should say I'm a doctor, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, the point being is that Russell Moore came out and he said the problem that they're having in a lot of congregations now is they will literally read the Beatitudes, Jesus's Sermon on the Mount, and they're having congregants come up and saying, where are you getting this woke crap?
Wow.
Literally the words of Jesus.
Right.
So look, so you have to decide, like, and I tell people this all the time. There are core fundamental beliefs that you have to believe in order to call yourself a Christian. Otherwise, it just implodes.
Yeah.
And one of them is the teachings of Jesus. Like, you can't say, oh, well, Jesus's teachings don't matter. I'm just going to cut and paste. You've basically just created your own Thomas Jefferson Bible where you get to cherry pick everything. You either accept all of it and like what he says and what he commands you to do and how to make disciples and love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, or you think it's a bunch of woke crap and you just invented your own religion.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I think we're at. Let me shift gears to something that I wanted to talk about earlier, but I forgot and I skipped over. My theory is that we're either pushing Iran to the point where they feel like they have to make a decision, which I do not think will happen. I think they're going to continue to hold the line. And I think that forces us into a situation where we've sent, tens of thousands of troops over there, at least 10,000 more, and we're going to end up having to use them because he doesn't want to look like he's walking away. And I think I think we're 50-50, like we could go to war, but I think it's leaning more to where we put boots on the ground because I think he's putting the troops in that position where he'll feel like he has to use them and wants to use them. What are your thoughts? Which I think would be a fucking awesome mistake.
Yeah. So, I wrote an article for Medium called Same War, Different Country. And my thoughts are you don't put that many troops in a region without doing something. You look at all of our troop buildups from Vietnam to Korea to Iraq and Afghanistan. What happened every single time? We went in. Like you don't do a troop buildup, the largest since Iraq, and then go, just kidding, we're going to take our toys and go home.
Well, I think what I would say is that we had a lot of bases across that region, and a lot of those bases already had a lot of personnel on them. Mm-hmm. So correct. We have been sending, let's say we've sent 15, 20,000 troops there. I don't think that's a big enough number if we really are going to go in. I think the problem is, and by the way, everybody, I'm not advocating this. I don't think we should go into Iran. I think it's a huge mistake. I think a lot of people are going to get killed if we do. And a lot of American kids are going to get killed if we do, because I think they can do some sort of shock force with the Marines and the 82nd Airborne. And the whole thing will be over. And they are woefully underestimating the power of the Iranian military. They believe that they've killed all the Iranian military, but once a boot hits the ground, you're then fighting within short range of. We're not shooting people from across the Gulf anymore. We're shooting people from with rockets that are close range. We're shooting mortars at people. We're shooting with guns, and that's a whole different scenario because now you're inside the mind of a soldier and who wants to fight the hardest. And I think that everybody wants to fight hard when they think they're going to die. But the fact is that if you've got 1 million conscripts and they've got a couple 100,000 soldiers still there, it doesn't matter if you've taken out all their weapons. If you send 25,000 people on the beaches, you're going to get slaughtered. Mm-hmm. That's my position. And so I worry about them. But I think that if you are going to do it and you're stupid enough to do this, you're going to have to spend a lot more. You're going to have to send a lot more American troops there than 20,000. And those 50,000, that 50,000 number you hear is largely support and largely on carriers and battleships and in places like Saudi Arabia, Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain. Those are where a lot of those troops are going to be, and they're going to stay there because their Air Force, their Navy, they're not going on the beaches, you know. And so, anyways, just from a military strategy standpoint, how are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I saw what happened in Iraq firsthand. When you start having civilian casualties, the people turn on you. Like, imagine somebody came into your neighborhood and accidentally dropped a bomb on your neighbor's house that you were close with. Are you going to suddenly be against them when you thought that they were bringing you to freedom initially? And don't mistake me at all. I think the Iranian regime is dangerous. I would love for them to go down. And, we've been putting up with their nonsense since the 1970s. I would love a free and democratic Iran, or whatever they decide. Let them decide, not Americans. But they're, as far as boots on ground, you got to remember, it's a 19-year-old kid. That's the average age of your American soldier, who's going to be kicking in doors in a neighborhood that he can't even pronounce, trying to determine in a split second if the man in front of him is a father, a doctor, an insurgent, an IRGC, soldier, or all four of them potentially. And then, one moment it's going to be sitting there trying to win their hearts and minds and seeing the children in the street. And then the next, it's the streets are empty, just like what we saw in Ramadi, and you're just emptying all your magazines trying to survive. And then after that, it's rebuilding the cities that you helped destroy, all while pretending the people there should be grateful that we invaded. And so it's a quagmire in so many ways.
You hit it right on the head, bro. You hit it right on the head. And Ramadi is a great example of what could happen, except Tehran has 9 million people or something. Mm-hmm. And, when you go into a place like that and it's urban warfare, I'm not even thinking about urban warfare. I'm talking about when they first hit the beaches there. You're going to have heavily landmined areas around there. You're going to have resistance on the beaches. Then you're going to have a lot of resistance going into the city of Tehran itself. You know as well as I do, it's either a 2 or 3 to 1 ratio to attack a fortified position. I promise you, Tehran's going to be a fucking fortified position. 20,000 soldiers aren't going to cut it.
Yeah,
and so
you have the mountainous areas too, and we don't even have maps of that area.
Yeah. So I'm against this in terms of, and I have seen some comments. I think maybe a couple of your friends commented, they'd rather deal with this now than allow them to get powerful enough to become, a country where it would start World War III. We're on the edge of starting World War III. The Russians are going to support them. Potentially the Chinese could support them. The North Koreans could support them. It could be World War III before you think it could.
Well, the Russians already are supporting it.
That's right. And we're allowing it. They're getting money from the oil, and they're going to turn around and use that money to buy weapons to give them to the Iranians, and they're going to use that money to buy weapons to fight the Ukrainians. And so it is getting ready. It's right on the edge of becoming wider than a regional conflict. So I don't know if to me.
Well, the Chinese have a better rating with the global populace than Americans do anymore.
Isn't that fucking strange and horrible to think about now? All in 1 year.
Yeah.
Our European allies, according today to the most recent reporting, our European allies have started negotiating separately from the United States on trying to get stuff through the Strait of Hormuz.
Right. Yeah. It's, it's difficult in so many ways. And to address those who say we should handle it, I'm going to be honest, part of me wants us to handle this and it just be done. I just don't think, and if you look at like all the top generals who advised and who were eventually ousted, strategically, I just don't think it's going to work. And that's the problem. It's like, I don't think that they're going to get more powerful because apparently we took out like all their uranium enrichment things during the 12-day war. So which is it? Like the question is and here's the funny thing. All the people that are like, Second Amendment, NRA people, they're like, you shouldn't trust the government. And yet somehow we should trust the government that they know what they're doing, like as far as this war, which is really weird. I'm like, what? Why? Like you guys are so anti-government. Like, why do we suddenly trust the government depending on whoever's in charge? Like for me, I'm like, I don't care who's in charge. I don't trust any of them,
Yeah.
And so honestly, I'm an equal opportunity offender.
Yeah.
So,
and as a journalist, I pretty much, I'm politely say I'll trust but verify. But like if you look at what's going on right now, you've got two bumbling real estate guys negotiating our peace deal with a kid who claims to be from Appalachia when he really isn't, with 5 names as your vice president, chiming in. Well, the only person who actually has any real ability to speak without fucking up his sentences, Marco Rubio, which I do not like the guy anyways, but he's probably one of the smarter guys in the administration.
He's probably the smartest guy in the administration.
Yeah, he's going drunk. He's going drunk to MMA fights with Trump on the night that negotiations failed. So I have no faith at all of them negotiating a peace deal whatsoever, especially because the Iranians don't want one.
Yeah,
I think the Iranians have been waiting for this. Now, I don't agree with you that they've been a pain in our ass since 1979. They had a democratically elected government in 1953, and we installed the Shah of Iran to take 40% of their oil,
right,
along with the CIA and the British intelligence. So they believe that we've been a pain in their ass since 1953, which is the reason they were pissed off in 1979.
Yeah.
That said, they are an Iranian regime that is not to be trusted, and they're fucking lunatics. But their people are good people. I know a lot of my friends, I have Iranian friends, and they're good people.
That's what. So for me, that's the hardest part. It's like the Iranian people are good people, and they're just under a thumb right now.
Yeah.
But they're going to get hurt in the process. And that's the part where it's really hard for me. Number one, as a Christian. And then number two, just as the way that I view warfare now. I've said it already. I'm not a pacifist. I think, and you've said it too. And there are reasons why, this regime should be taken out, but there's just not a strategy. And I think it's going to lead to more civilian deaths, more American deaths, and regional instability. And had we come up with like a plan, that might have worked or something, then maybe people would get behind it. But that's not what's happening here. We're saying that we created a shit sandwich and now we have to eat it. Well, why?
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to say hi to a friend of mine, Deborah Alexander, who's done a lot of diplomacy around the world. She says she's checking in from Kentucky, not a vet, but in Afghanistan, 12 years. That's a long time.
It's a long time.
3 in Iraq. I had those same big questions when I got back. Mission and purpose lost. So, Deb, it's good seeing you on here. I'm going to take about 4 or 5 questions. Then we're going to let, we've been going an hour and a half. It's a long time. I know some people had some questions. I was reading all your comments.
Ask some of the spicy ones, man. I'm happy. I don't have I have friends that have different opinions of me. I have friends that are MAGA, man. Like it's cool for me. I have friends that are trans. Like I don't for me, my whole thing is love everybody equally. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, you obviously wouldn't be able to serve in this military with those various opinions. Holly, do you have any questions? You thought Holly's going to chime in?
It's a comment. So let's just start off spicy. Zach says, "Stop with the white male conservative Christian is the problem."
Oh, she missed that point where we were talking about it for 5 minutes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I've been.
Well, let me address that too. I'm a white dude in America, man. It's been great. Who was it that joke? I think it was either Shane Gillis or it maybe been Louis C.K. who's like, I would re-up if I, got to do what. And I realize there's certain inherent privileges and everything else that goes along with it. But again, I go back to the melting pot thing. And I think the beauty of America is the fact that we have such diversity. And I learned that in the military. And so my problem is exactly what you said. It is the white nationalists that are saying this is the way that this country has to be. And they're cherry picking verses out of the scripture, which is just wild to me.
Yeah.
and then turning against their fellow man when, Jesus is literally like, his whole thing is everybody's welcome at the table. Yeah. And for me, like, that is the crux of, my faith. And so, again, I want to live a life that looks like I have good fruit and not diseased fruit. And so everybody's welcome at the table. It doesn't mean that we believe the same things. It doesn't mean that I don't even think that their lives are the way that God would necessarily intend them to be. But it means that they have a place and that I can become friends with them. And hopefully, I don't want them to be seen as a project, but I hope that my good deeds, like what the Apostle Peter says, would glorify God. And even when they see him, they'd be like, man, I don't believe what he believes, but at least he's a good human being. And he actually acts on what he believes. And right now the Christian nationalism just doesn't do that. Like, it's about oppressing your neighbor. It's about, it's about warping theology to advance political agendas or foreign policy. And none of that has any place in the kingdom of God. So, yeah.
Another one, Holly.
How many women soldiers did you see during your time at war anywhere?
So this is good. When we were in Afghanistan, there was one female soldier on base, and it's just so that she could pat down, the women.
Pat down the women when you go on searches. By the way, which is not. I mean, they would pat down the women because they would hide weapons on the women. You go to these villages and they'd have hand grenades and fucking handguns and AK-47s underneath their burqas. And so they brought women along to do that so as not to insult the male culture. And they'd find stuff, frankly. And so it's a dangerous job. And I think that I think it's around 13% of the U.S. military are women. And it's not an insignificant number. And I think Ben would agree with this now. And if you're in a battle, if you're in a war inside a country right now, the way weapon systems are today, there is nothing anymore that's not potentially a frontline situation. So just because you're on a super base like Bagram doesn't mean the Taliban's not going to rocket you from 15 miles away. They will.
Or send a drone.
Or send a drone like you're seeing now. And so the risk for women in war zones is the same as many of the men who are serving. They may not be. But I did a story at 60 Minutes about the first woman since I think Vietnam who won the Silver Star. She was a medic. She was out. Her convoy got hit, and she literally put some of the wounded soldiers underneath her and laid on top of them until the firefight was over. She was in the 82nd Airborne, and she won the Silver Star presented to her. We went down to her town in Texas, and they had a fucking parade for her. It was amazing. And by the way, the 82nd Airborne guys, the commanders who put her in for the medal, were really complimentary of her, but the young kids, 18 to 23, resented her because they said that we did the same things that day that she did. And I don't remember them diving on top of wounded soldiers and putting their body. I mean, it's like sometimes those guys get a little bit, when you're young, you have that young, youthful jealousy and stuff that older commanders kind of go, no, man, she did something special that day. She wasn't even supposed to be in combat. And yet when she was called on, she was dragging people out of the vehicles, laying on top of them so that they wouldn't get shot in the middle of a firefight, putting her life on the line. Yeah, so they're in combat now situations, whether you want to officially say they are or not, they are.
So two of the women that I served with, they were part of our team. They're in my book also. So I used to not be a fan of women in combat roles, just because of the muscular, dense, skeletal stuff. But I had women change my mind. My whole thing was, so I became fiercely zealous about this. So after I got injured, if you're pulling a dude who's just dead weight in body armor and that's typically 70 extra pounds, like I want somebody who's going to be fueled by like adrenaline and everything else to be able to get me off the battlefield. And so these were women in our unit, and I didn't care that they were women. I just cared that they were going to be able to do their job and drag me off the battlefield. And once they showed that they could do that, I was in. And I'm still friends with them. I was just at the Ramadi reunion with them, and there were plenty of women there that I served alongside when I was in Iraq. I don't have a problem with it as long as they can pull their weight and the same thing. And nobody should. Like that, like if they can do the same job and they can do it with precision and accuracy, more power to them. And so
when I always make the argument, Ben, that the physical aspect of soldiering is only one aspect of soldiering. Mm-hmm. And, you might have women who might not be able to pull a guy off the battlefield, but she can make a quick decision and get two guys from one place command them to get over and then pull the guy off while they're simultaneously controlling the battle space. So there's intellectual aspects to it that, some people are going to be better at other things than everybody. And while you may have to be able to do all the same things, certainly an infantry guy who's 19 years old may not be a good medic as the woman who was on that battlefield that day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
that's key. She may have better medical skills, and you want her as opposed to the dude that has none. So
that's right.
So yeah, it's a both end. So Iraq was where I served with quite a few women. Afghanistan, it was very few. So, and I mean, that was early on in the war effort. That was before combat arms, but a lot of the women that I worked with were kind of some of the first women to be embedded with special operations line units. And they did a fantastic job. And I'm so damn proud of them, and we still stay in touch. They're in my book, just very briefly. And so, I have so much respect, just for the men and women of the armed services. And, that's what I tell people all the time. I just don't say my brothers in arms anymore. I say my brothers and sisters in arms because I'm still close with them. Yeah.
I'm going to try to get 2 more questions and let you go for the night. We have like 100 questions, but we're going to do like 2 more.
You can give me a couple more. You're fine. I don't have anywhere to be. So
yeah, I know. It just becomes much harder to get people to watch it if it's like 3 hours. We're not Joe Rogan. We're not talking about MMA fighting and politics at the same time.
You want spicy again?
Yeah, spicy. Sure. Hit them with the spicy.
All right. Dave's keeping it spicy on Substack. I believe the world is too overpopulated with too many people competing for limited resources. Maybe we need a lot of wars. What do you think?
So the Thanos snap, right? I think that was why it was such a compelling argument in the Marvel movies. He made a great villain as far as everything. Do I think that we are depleting a lot of our natural resources and that people are? Well, sure. But here's what's going to happen. We're about to have the greatest population bell curve collapse, period. So you're going to get your wish anyways. The boomers are going to die out. The housing market is going to collapse. I mean, you look at it. The average age of a home buyer in the United States is 59.
Fuck you. I'm 58 and I bought a house a year ago.
There you go.
Piece of shit.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So you have to think about this. So
I'm not dying yet, bastard.
But my point being is if you look at all the world's population bell curves, they are rampantly in decline. You look at Japan. They can't even replace their workforce. There are literally business owners giving away their businesses for free. This is happening. We are not reproducing at the rate in which we are going to have stable growth. The only place that's probably doing that is India. China is in absolute free fall. They got rid of the one-child policy because of that.
Right.
So again, you are looking at Western society collapsing in on itself probably by 2035. So either way, if you think we're sucking up too many resources, just wait about 10 years.
Well, and there won't be a lot of resources left. So there'll be wars for them at that point. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're seeing it with oil right now. And it seems like every war we get into, Venezuela wasn't about Maduro, it was about oil. Iran won't be about regime change and nuclear weapons. It'll be about oil. Iraq, what was it about? Oil. So, we see, and that's just one resource. When it comes to rare earth minerals and all that kind of stuff, you see the discussions about Greenland. That is about rare earth minerals. That's
the goofiest argument ever for Greenland. That's a polar ice cap. Maybe we could go in at the sides, but you're talking about developing some technology that is not going to exist for another 20 years. And even refining it and getting out of there, it's just such an absurd argument in so many ways. It's an absurd argument, especially if you think of the fact that they're by proxy a NATO country. Yeah. Well, Ukraine is the one that we use. If you've wondered why all your electronics have gone up, we produce neon out of Ukraine. All the stuff that we need for supercomputer chips. And if you look at the cost of any electronics, even from our cars, they have doubled since COVID.
Yeah.
Why is that? Well,
any input on Lebanon and how that's likely to be the larger no-end war?
Okay, so here's my 1 minute on Israel and everybody they attack. I always tell people, I was a professor at Columbia University in the journalism documentary program, And they always ask me, like, what conflicts have you covered? And I've been to Israel many times, been to that region many times, been to Lebanon, all that kind of stuff, but I've never covered the war there. And they always ask me why. All the wars you've covered, why wouldn't you cover that one? And I say, well, someday I may have a child, and that child might be, say, Jeffrey Newton Jr., and he'll grow up and want to be following his daddy's footsteps, and he will go to Columbia Journalism School, and I'll die, and he'll become a famous journalist, and he'll go cover the war in Israel against whoever. And then he'll have a child, and that child will want to be Jeffrey Newton III, and he'll end up going to Israel and covering that war. And then he'll have another one, and then it'll be Jeffrey Newton IV, and they'll want to be a famous journalist and win Emmy Awards and DuPont Awards and all that kind of stuff, overseas press awards for war reporting, and they'll be covering the Israel conflicts. My point being is that there's no point in covering those conflicts anymore, because Israel is going to be fighting them for a millennium. And I just think that region of the world will always be fighting each other. And I never wanted to cover it because I felt like it was fucking pointless. At least in the other wars I've covered around the world, and there's been more than a dozen conflicts that I've covered over 30 years. Literally to the point where I had houses in many of these countries. Okay. I never wanted to cover that one because I'd get shot by some Israeli IDF guy or kidnapped by somebody for what? To be a footnote in history 1,000 years from now for the war that's still going on? It just makes me insane. And it's another one of those places, Muslims and Christians and Jews all fighting over the same fucking territory. And, you want to wonder why I'm agnostic. There you go. I'm just, every time I go someplace, I'm sick and tired of, Christians fighting Muslims, fighting Jews, it's just never ending. And it's all over Africa. It's all over, and it's been that way 1,000 years before I was born. So what's going to happen there? Israel's going to continue. I saw a video today of them walking prisoners out in a line of like 200 Lebanese men, walking them out privately. Somebody shot video through a window. They've destroyed Gaza to the point where it's nothing but rubble. It's a war crime. It's going to be a war crime on Lebanon. I think the Israeli military and the Israeli government now have become what they always said they wouldn't, which is a genocidal group that was very similar to what Nazi Germany did. And I'm sorry to say that. I hate to say that for my friends who don't agree with me, but I've been to conflict zones and I've seen genocide, and this is the most recent example of it. And that's what I think. What's going to happen there? I think Israel's going to continue to fight until they run out of ammunition or kill everybody around them.
So let me give some backstory to this because my views changed wildly. So when October 7th happened to the Israelis, I was on board. I was like, this is their 9/11. Cool. And they went into Gaza and I was like, they're fighting a war. This is how wars go. And, I had seen what had happened. My views changed when I began to see what systematically kept happening to the people in the area. Number one is a civil affairs soldier who worked with a local indigenous population. Our job, you will not find a better military at this, at minimizing civilian interference and collateral on the battlefield. When we were in Iraq and a civilian accidentally got killed, they would come to the front gate and protest because they had that right. And they knew that we would allow them to do that. We would pay reparations for the things that we were done. And I know that sounds cold, but blood money is actually a very common practice in Middle Eastern culture. We were not there to just wipe out their infrastructure. When we took out buildings, it was strategic because of the fact that there was either insurgents in there that were killing all of us, and so we had to take that out, or it was rigged to blow or whatever. We weren't just going in and leveling places. Now, this is crazy because we used to do that in World War II. We would just bomb city centers. How wild is that? Like when you think about it, we're just going to bomb London city center. Oh, we're going to bomb Berlin, And now we're like, that's terrible. Yeah. That's awful. And that's what happened. And I said, this is wrong. As Americans, we don't do this. Like when we go into places, our goal is to help, the civilians in the area and to win the hearts and minds. And they did the exact opposite. They just leveled that place. And so to Jeff's point, I don't think that they're going to have any type of peace in the area as far as Lebanon. I think the fighting's going to continue until there is some type of, change of heart or change of mind. I have no problems with Jews. I have plenty of Jewish friends, love Jews. I have a problem with the nation state of Israel, and especially the way that Americans are continue to give them billions of dollars in foreign aid while I can't even get my own parks and national forests and lands taken care of, and my kids a great education and our teachers paid. Like, that's messed up. My kids' teachers should be paid, not funding like Israel to fight Lebanon. Like, that's absurd to me. Why do we keep giving them money? Like, what do they have on us? What did Epstein do? My God. And there's all types of theories and conspiracy theories, and I'm not going to get into that. But unfortunately, I wrote an article on this a while back. It's called "We Just Can't Seem to Quit the Middle East." It's like that scene from Brokeback Mountain. I wish I could quit you. I just don't think it's going to happen with Israel either, unfortunately. And that's just the sad state of geopolitics and world affairs. The Levant has consistently been a bloody struggle, regardless of who's in charge. From the Crusades to the Moors to now, this is a 1,000-year fight. And I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. And that is not me saying anything's justified. That is me just statement of fact. That's just the way things are. And sadly, I think until, something breaks through in the heart of the men and women in those areas to where they can stop fighting one another and they want peace, it's going to continue to happen.
Yeah. I had another thing from your friend, Zach. He said, stop putting words in my mouth. Zach, I wasn't putting words in your mouth. I read your quote directly, and then I responded
to other people.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I just read your quote directly and responded to it with my own opinion. And I respect the fact that you served and spent a lot of time, and I know you taught with
Zach and I served together. He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I got no qualms with you. I don't happen to believe that we're being taken over by other religions right now, but I think the Christian nationalists are a big concern. I'm not worried about the other ones because they don't threaten me and tell me what to think and what to do. But I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, bro. It's not trying to be contentious with you. I was just responding to your comment because I thought it was interesting and important. Okay. Girls do like uniforms, Ben.
I know. That's why I'm married.
You should see them in MMA. Okay. Lapsed Catholic here. Okay, Kelly, nice to meet you. Let's see. I'm going to do a couple more. I'm right there. Agnostics. Okay. George Carlin to priest. You first. I had faith in George Carlin. Okay. It's all or nothing. More myth than legend. It's not anymore. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the questions here.
If we want to talk Christianity as far as myth and legend, like, I would encourage you to check out Wesley Huff and like the historicity of stuff. For me, Christianity was not just emotionally satisfying; it was intellectually stimulating. And so, I think if you do the research and you come to that conclusion, still, good on you.
Well, Zach commented again a couple minutes ago. He said, meaning I guess he means me, just seems very biased and really doesn't understand how capable the Marines are. I've been with the Marines in combat dozens of times, so I know how capable they are. In fact, I made the argument today that they were very capable.
Yeah.
And I've been with them.
And you served with them in Ramadi.
I was shot in Ramadi, and they treated me. So I don't know what you're thinking. I don't understand about how they work. I think they're among the most courageous guys I've ever been to battle with. And how dangerous the IRGC is. I definitely understand that. It's my job actually to understand it. What I don't think is that in the last 40 years, they've actually ever attacked us, and they have not. They've been having proxy wars with Israel through Hezbollah and Hamas, but I'm not here to give you a lecture on that. I know that, though, and I'm very capable of understanding that. They're very dangerous. They fought an 8-year standstill with Iraq, and they're very capable of doing the same thing with us right now, whether we're they have a $30 billion military budget. Zach, and we have a almost $1 trillion military budget, and they're fighting us to a standstill. Okay, so I'm not trying to say that I don't understand how dangerous they are. A group of people that only has a $30 billion budget that fights a $1 trillion budget army to a standstill, I understand how dangerous they are. In fact, they're so dangerous that I said invading them with 20,000 troops would get a lot of Americans killed. Mm-hmm. So to your point,
we would have to at least put 100,000 boots on the ground, I think.
That's my thought too. My thought too. So I probably agree with you more than I think, and I think you must understand. You must have misunderstood me. I never said anything bad about the Marines. They're very capable, but if you put 5,000 Marines off a carrier that has a 1 million man draft, which the IRGC has actually said that they've drafted it. They have a 1 million man army. I don't believe that, but I believe they have several 100,000. We don't have that many in their theater of operation. I think that those numbers just don't add up. It's not the right math. If you had 100,000 Marines going in there, I might have a different conversation with you about it. I don't want you to, anyways. Let's see. Maybe. And anyways, I'm not trying to get an argument with them. I'm just trying to respond to them. And by the way, when you get off here, you might be able to see these comments on Facebook, and you might be able to respond to your buddy directly, or you can give him a call. I'm not against the military. I spent 30 years of my life covering the military, Zach.
No, we're all friends.
About anybody who's been in combat, unfortunately. Anyways, let's see. Going through, Holly says, "Thank you for your service, Zach." Yeah, it's my wife saying that to you. Canadian listening. Holly, you have any more?
Someone asked about the UN oil for food program in Iraq just before the Iraq war started. Do you know anything about that?
No,
not really. I mean,
that's out of my expertise.
I mean, I know I can tell you a lot about the United Nations and their weapons for mass destruction search in Iraq, but their oil for food program, it wasn't something I studied. I have a book on it here behind me in this library, written by a man who studied that program and also and studied the Iraqi oil industry and the impact that the Americans and Chinese have had on it post-war. But I'm not an expert on that. I try not to talk about stuff I don't know much about.
Yeah, same. If I don't know, I'm like, I'll be stupid in the room.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna go. Let's see. There's a lot of people just chiming in saying they're Donna, God bless America. I'll power to you. What do you think people are fighting for in wars? Just encourage more and more warfare. I mean, we have a tendency right now in the United States to be fighting a lot of wars, and then we're criticizing people for threatening us. We're fighting wars all over the world all the time. We've attacked 7 countries in the last year.
Yeah, and this is tough. I don't know what I don't know going on behind the doors of Capitol Hill, but I do have a lot of friends who are on Capitol Hill, or they are military liaisons for congressional representatives, and most of them have said that most of our politicians are utterly delusional. They are off their rockers, thinking that this is like what the American people want, and so on and so forth. And they'll work these backdoor deals with each other. They'll talk trash to each other's face, and then they'll go, do their thing, because it's all political theater. But the thing is if it's political theater and they're delusional, then they're going to get us involved in skirmishes that we do not need to be in. And it's not going to affect the American baseline. And so why are we starting all of, these proxy wars, these different things? And I do believe that there are dangerous people that need to be taken out, that are doing very, very evil things, as I've consistently and repeatedly said. But I truly believe that most of the time, the things that come back for the American populace and those in power, and you can say this is true even for the tech company, is money and power. Money and power. It's what it always comes back to. And so the rich get richer. We continue to see that. We've seen it since Occupy Wall Street, since Jeff Bezos, since, Mark Zuckerberg, all of it. We've seen it continually happen. The middle class is eroding at a rapid pace, and the haves and have-nots are getting greater and greater and in between. So for me, I think a lot of our foreign policy revolves around how do we get the fat cats fatter?
Yeah. There's a comment here real quick from Donna. Sorry, Donna, I'm just scrolling here. Donna Wilhelm, actually. She said, that's not true. I'm not sure who you were talking to, Donna, but do you really believe that people that served in Vietnam War had a choice? Do you believe that World War II, they had a choice? How about the war that's going on now? Did they have a choice? Well, I mean, once you sign up, you've signed up.
You don't.
If you're drafted in World War II, you don't have a choice. If you're drafted in Vietnam, you don't have a choice. If you decided to serve 5 years ago thinking you were going to be in the military and just be a helpful servant to the country,
I didn't have a choice.
Yeah, when they call you, you don't have a choice at that point. You can't get out. You're under a contract and you got to go. So, do I think Claudia Key wants to know? Do I think Cuba's next? I hope not, but I think Marco Rubio has his way. They will be. But we never know. I mean, if Trump thinks he's losing something, he has a tendency to try to fight another day. But I think the reason that they would love to go have Cuba has nothing to do with the freedom of Cuban people or that they're a bad regime. I think it's all a real estate play. They love the beaches. In the 1950s, we had hotels and properties there. And when they had the revolution, we lost them all. And I think Donald Trump would love for he and his family to have their hands on Veradero Beach in Cuba, for instance, where my family in Canada goes to vacation.
Let me posit a question to play devil's advocate for the rest, because we've talked a lot about Trump and that movement. The Democrats currently have zero teeth. You guys don't have any forerunners. You guys just look like a bunch of wimps out there. You're like, we're so mad, and you have no viable options. And the thing that the Democrats promised to do, where they're like, oh, we're going to do this big report and figure out where we went wrong, and I promise we're going to release it to the public. And you didn't.
Yeah, it's all nonsense.
It's all nonsense. Until they pull their head out of their ass, they're going to dude, if it ends up Vance and Kamala again, Vance is going to trounce that dude. Trounce her. So that's sad.
I think you're probably going to see somebody like Gavin Newsom run. I think you're going to see, the governor of Maryland. He's willing to fight. Right.
I know he is. I love the way he's been trolling Trump and asking the question. It's not Lego cartoons, but it's still pretty interesting. But the guy has the personality of a used car salesman. Whoop, did we lose you? Oh, I'm in the show, but now it's just buffering. Let me text. Okay, so the battery went out. Jeff is going to be right back. Let me jump on Facebook and see if I can field some questions for everybody while this is ongoing. So where are we at right here? Yeah. All right, cool. Here we are. Let's see the comments. All right. Mark Kelly. Okay, yeah. Mark Kelly. I like Mark Kelly. Okay. He's totally legit. Dude, straight up war hero. He seems to be the one person that stood up here and there. I really, really enjoy the way, and he didn't say anything controversial when they went after him. The rule of land and law warfare is you have to you can't follow illegal orders. That's just the nature of the beast. So you can't even use that as a defense. It's indefensible against a judge advocate general. So yes, I do like Mark Kelly. So here's the problem that I foresee. The problem is the Democratic Party has gone so far overboard with stuff. I don't see them picking a moderate. And if they picked somebody like Mark Kelly, who has a backbone and a spine and a really good running candidate, I think that they would do really, really, really well. But they have to have a Democratic National Convention first. They can't do what they did last time. I understand the whole war chest thing and everything else that was ongoing. But Kelly would be a great front runner. I just don't think that they're going to put him in there. I'm willing to be wrong. I like the guy, again, war hero, astronaut, smart dude. Very, 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 intelligent guy that I think that it would be a solid candidate. So
I think
you're asking about Mark Kelly.
Yeah, I like Kelly too. I think he's great. I'm seeing comments about Andy Bashir in Kentucky, the state that I grew up in.
Yeah,
I like Andy Bashir, but Kentucky's not really a swing state, so it doesn't help them electorally. And I think that
Kentucky's a more purple state too, which is nice. You've got Massey, who loves to go toe to toe.
Yeah, but Massey is Massey is a Republican, basically libertarian. I think, and he's, by the way, he's not popular right now in Kentucky because he's taken a stance against Trump. I think Kentucky's more of a red state, will always be a red state. I don't think he helps the party enough. It's not from a big state with a lot of electoral votes. And you remember what happened during the campaign between Bush and Gore. Bush couldn't win his own state of Tennessee. I mean, Gore couldn't win his own state of Tennessee. If he would have won Tennessee, he'd be president. So, like that comes into play politically. I think you also have to look at somebody like somebody was talking about Tallarico. I mean, he's not even in Congress right now. He's not. I
like Tallarico. Tallarico, he's kind of more of the progressive side of Christianity, but he's a genuine guy, like from Texas.
But he's not a presidential candidate at his age.
He's not. Yeah, he's going to have to get more. He's the. Okay, again, I like Tallarico. I like the way that he talks about Jesus and taking care of the marginalized, the poor, and the oppressed, and like all of that. I tend to be very Orthodox Christian as far as the way that I handle stuff, from Augustine, which J.D. Vance butchered as far as his just war thing, and Thomas Aquinas and all of those, the old school, C.S. Lewis. Like C.S. Lewis is the closest that you're going to find to my flavor of faith. But the point being is Tallarico is kind of like Beto O'Rourke was. He's the flavor of the week right now. And I'd love to see him do well, but unfortunately he just doesn't have the wherewithal to push forward. And he's willing to come across the aisle. You have to have somebody that's willing to come across the aisle. And I think if Mark Kelly is the forerunner and they will actually do that, then I think that's a great choice.
Judy Kohler's coming on and ask about Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg could possibly
won't win. No,
not in this country. They're not ready for a gay president. Period.
Yeah, I told my friends this. They were like, "I like Buttigieg." I was like, "Yeah,
he's fucking smart. 7 languages, intelligence background.
Yeah,
served in the military, can out debate anybody, but he will not win in the United States when he runs for president. He might be a good presidential candidate, maybe possibly a good Secretary of State, but
So here's the thing. Bloomberg just recently did a thing on like what Trump's focusing on is not the thing that most Americans want. And the funny thing is like the things that most Americans agreed on was like trans athletes and, women's sports and stuff like that. You can't come from the Biden administration and have that background right now and expect to win the White House if because of that. Smart guy. If the Democrats are planning on winning, it's just not going to happen. People are not going to vote for that. They remember it, and it's not going to go well. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I think he's a smart, genuine guy who's very kind and compassionate, and cares about like things and extremely, 7 languages, my God. But yeah, no, if they put him in the forerunner, he's going to get trounced.
Yeah. Okay, listen, we're over 2 hours now, and I want to cut and run while I'm still ahead. I'm losing battery and dropping off, and Ben's taking over the podcast for me because I can't keep my battery charged.
I had to jump on Facebook real quick, and they were like Mark Kelly. I was like, yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. So I just want to thank Benjamin for being here. Ben Sledge is take a look at his book. The title again is
"We're Cowards Go to Die."
Go to die, and
you'll figure out why it's called that at the very end.
Don't make them skip the last couple of pages, man.
They won't understand it though if they don't read the whole thing. But I based it when I was in Ramadi. I read "I Am Legend," and I figured out why the book was called "I Am Legend" because that's the last 3 words of the book. And I was like, if I ever write a book, I'm going to do something similar. And I did. Yeah. So there you go. There's your hint.
So everybody, thanks for having Ben. We'll have him back on, especially in the next couple of weeks. If something else happens in Iran, if Ben will agree to join me. And
I'll join you.
Everybody, thank you very much. And actually, Zach, I appreciate you for pushing on the arguments here. It's not, we don't have a problem with that at all in any way whatsoever. Maybe maybe misunderstood me. And all those folks out there who want to support our Substack, you can find us from the Writer's Cabin on Substack, and you can support us for paid subscriptions or non-paid subscriptions. Paid ones help feed that cat that was behind us a little while ago, and our Georgie and our job Dixie. And Ben, you're actually on a different platform that maybe some people might want to follow you on. You do a lot of writing on your platform. Would you tell me about that a little bit real quick before we sign off?
Yeah. So before Substack ever got big, I began writing on Medium. I did a couple investigative journalism articles for about sexual abuse inside the Southern Baptist Convention. And I did that as a Christian because I thought it was wrong, obviously, as opposed to being like, Catholics or the SBC that turned a blind eye. So I've done everything from investigative journalism to op-ed pieces to geopolitical pieces on Medium. If you just follow me on, Facebook or Instagram or any of those, I post the link that bypasses the paywall, so you don't even have to pay for it. But if you want to become a subscriber, that money helps, feed me and my family. And I continue to write because I love writing. And then other than that, I'll continue to write and work on my fantasy novel because, like C.S. Lewis, I love to write fiction and I love to write nonfiction. So that's what I'm working on.
So on your Medium, it's under Benjamin Sledge. Is that what it's on?
Yeah, all you got to do is look me up. I can, it's like at medium.com/@Benjamin Sledge.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your Facebook is obviously Benjamin Sledge.
Yeah, you can find me. I'm pretty easy to find.
And if you buy his book and you send it to him on FedEx with a return envelope, he probably sign it for you, people.
Actually, that's not true. You can just go to my website and purchase a copy, a signed copy, and then I'll mail it to you. Covers cost, shipping, me. And I don't just autograph it. I write each person a personalized note because my readers are important. And I hope you enjoy the story and I want to hear from you.
All right, guys. Thanks very much for everybody. And thanks, Ben, man. It's good talking to you. We'll talk to you soon. Love you, buddy.
Love you, man.
Right. Cheers. See you. Good night, everybody.